Hello everyone, and welcome to our very first installment of whatever this situation is. I have not come up with a name yet, still working on that. But basically, true crime has like completely consumed my entire life. I'm hella obsessed, might be a problem. I thought it might be kind of fun to come on here like once a week maybe and talk to you guys about a true crime case while I prepare myself a meal. But I don't plan on really talking too much about what I'm actually making, more like I'm just making it and telling you guys about a true crime case. So that's what I'm gonna be doing today. This specific case I thought would be a good one to start out with because it is a murder that happened in my hometown. And this family, the Richardsons, they actually purchased my family, like my childhood home at one point when my parents were selling it. And the Richardsons backed out like right before closing and bought a house like a mile and a half down the street. So just a super weird connection. The whole case is so sad and tragic, so I thought I would tell you guys about it while I make myself some blueberry muffins. So let's get into it. The Richardsons had moved to the Waco area around 1999. And so they had been living in the Waco area for about 6 years before any of this happened. The family was John Richardson and his wife, Gretchen Richardson, and then they also had 4 children. I'm not really sure how John and Gretchen met. I don't know where they moved from. I know that John had some family in the Houston area, so it could possibly be from there. But the point is they had been living in this Waco area for about 6 years at this point. Gretchen was a real estate agent in the area, so that's what she did for work. She states that her downward spiral started in the year of 2005. Right off the bat, 2005, she has to have a hysterectomy. So she goes through that, and she says that after that major surgery, she starts coping with depression, and she was using her pain meds to cope with her depression. And that led her to become pretty heavily addicted to her pain medicine. And it was said that she would be out all hours of the night, and sometimes she wouldn't come home. Her coworkers said that sometimes they would come into work the next morning for work, like 8 a.m. normal day. They would get there and Gretchen would already be asleep at her desk, like she had slept there all night. A little weird Gretch. I'm not really sure how she kept her job throughout, this time, but she did. And she even said herself that at this point in her life, she was making her rounds to different doctors to fill her need for these drugs, and she was also going to other sources for these drugs. Okay, but Gretchen's addiction to these opioids was clearly not getting any better. So we're coming up on the night in question at this point, which is June 4th. A little before midnight on June 4th, Gretchen comes home. She's been out most of the night. She's been drinking. She tells her husband that she has taken a few Ambien and 5 to 8 hydrocodones. Ma'am, I don't know how she got home. That seems dangerous in itself, like you're drinking and you're on those. What do I know? She and her husband get in a huge fight, obviously. And John tells her, like, look, you have this problem, and I just need you to know that, like, I've even had to reach out to your doctor and pharmacists around town to let them know not to fill your prescription anymore because you're abusing these drugs. And that just completely enraged Gretchen, okay? She is pissed. So she is like physically fighting John at this point, trying to get out of the house. And he's like, no, you cannot leave right now. Hello, you're on drugs. You just told me you've taken Ambien, you've been drinking, like you do not need to go anywhere. And she is fighting him until finally he just lets her leave. So she leaves the house. She's gonna go find some more drugs. She's mad. She's mad John told her, you need to stop doing this. And she's like, no can do. Gotta go get some more pills. She drives to her realtor office where she works. And one of her coworkers that works there, she is aware that one of her male coworkers keeps a gun in his desk. He said that the building next door was robbed at one point, and also sometimes people have to stay late. He works with mostly women, and so he was like, I just want them to feel protected and safe in the event that anything happens. You know, sometimes they need to stay late, work by themselves. But little did her coworker know that that gun that he kept in his desk as a safety precaution would end up becoming a murder weapon. Okay, she knows that the gun is there. So she goes to her workplace, she grabs the gun, and then she leaves, and she is on a mission to get more drugs. She goes to a nearby town, and she goes to the small apartment complex, meets up with a dealer. She buys about $400 worth of drugs, and it's said that it may have included methamphetamines in that $400 worth of drugs that she got. She leaves the apartment. She says that she is heading back towards her home in Lorena when she sees her husband's truck behind her, and he's flashing his lights at her. But she is like, what the fuck, John, right? She's pissed. So she pulls over. When she pulls over, she has the gun in her lap, wrapped in a t-shirt. John gets out of his truck, and she can hear him yelling, and he comes up to her and he's yelling at her, and they're arguing, and she gets out of the car with the gun and says, just shut up, and fires the gun in the air. The theatrics. They continue to argue. I would be scared if I knew that she had a gun. The last words he said was to stay away from our kids. And then she shot him. He was shot several times, twice in the back and at least once in the leg. Conveniently, she says she doesn't remember anything until the cops got there. She was with it enough to remember, oh wait, I have $400 worth of drugs on me. What she decided to do was take those drugs, she planted them in the back of her husband's truck as well as in the back of his pockets to make it seem like it was a drug deal gone wrong. A little while goes by, and then this police officer that just was on his normal patrol happened upon the scene. He comes up to them and he's asking Gretchen what happened, and she's like telling him that this African-American man attacked her husband, and it must have been a drug deal gone wrong, but that man fled the scene. And the officer was like, okay, well, that seems really weird because you have blood all over your shirt and your pants and your shoes, gunshot residue on her hands, and she had that t-shirt that had blood and bullet holes in it. I'm assuming he meant the t-shirt that she had the gun wrapped up in. It's not looking too good for you right now, Gretchen. Unfortunately, John did pass away from the gunshots that Gretchen inflicted on him. Gretchen did later end up pleading guilty. She was charged with first-degree murder and sentenced to serve 40 years in prison, and she is eligible for parole after 20 years of that sentence, which this happened in 2005, so she'll be eligible for parole in a couple years here. Some of Gretchen's friends were totally prepared to testify against her. They said that Gretchen had mentioned to them before that she wanted to kill her husband and she was going to make it look like a drug deal gone wrong. But none of her friends thought that she was actually serious about it, which it's a wild thing to say about your spouse, but you just hope that that's not true, that they don't actually mean that. So I can kind of see where they're coming from. It is very concerning, definitely a red flag. Some of her coworkers later said, quote, that they were scared about how manipulative, vindictive, hateful, and intimidating Gretchen could be. And they said that she often would be on the phone with her husband yelling at him and telling him how much she hated him. I feel like this really could have been prevented. Like, there was a lot of red flags. And the prosecutor, Mike Freeman, on the case said, quote, I am convinced the major motive in this crime was her discontented state of mind with her marriage that festered in her heart and grew until hatred consumed her. I felt like that was very strong and very telling. Obviously, that's 100% what happened, but it's just always so sad when so much hatred builds up. You know, these people got married and had 4 children and they loved each other and cared about each other at one time. I just don't understand when it takes such a dark turn, you know? I also saw, only in one article, so it's not completely confirmed, but I did see that Gretchen had been having an affair with at least 2 other men in the months before the murder. Unfortunately, this just was a horrible combination of intense abhorrence towards her spouse that bubbled up the last 5 months from January to June. Of course, we don't know what was happening behind closed doors, but just based on all of the testimonies and everything that I've read, it just seems like John was trying to do what was best for his family and trying to keep his wife from harming herself any further. And she didn't see it that way. Their children ended up going to live with John's parents in the Houston area, and his parents raised them. It's horrible enough to even just lose one of your parents, but then to lose one of them to murder at the hands of your other parent. Cannot possibly imagine the repercussions that they faced from all of this. I hope that they're all doing well now. Rest in peace, John. I hope his family has been able to find some kind of closure in all of this and move forward. Just really sad. Like, they were both in their early 40s when this happened, so they both still had a lot of life left, and things could have turned out a lot differently if Gretchen would have gotten some help. So that is the tragic story of John Richardson. I don't really know how to end this appropriately. I made muffins. If they're good, I will leave a link to the recipe in the description. If they're not good, then I won't. But that is it for this week. If you have anyone in particular you'd like for me to talk about, just leave it down below. Bye, guys.